Alright, man, it's been a long time coming. It's kind of sad, but you know, I thought about doing this for a long time. As soon as Tamiya re-released they started re-releasing their kits, the Frog and the Hornet and all of those, I was always like, you know, if Associated ever does that, I'll be all over it. So, you know, there's been a lot of anticipation for me coming up to this point. So actually cracking this open is, it's pretty huge for me. So, I guess enough gabbing. Let's open it up and see what's inside. Wow. Just looking at these tires is really crazy. You know, I've only seen pictures of these tires for years. To see them again, brand new in a bag like this is pretty cool. These are famous fiberglass shock towers. It's the nose plate, gold anodized nose plate. These are something that I've been missing. These are the gold anodized shocks. You know, when I was younger, I was like just wanting to upgrade everything on the car. I ended up putting a set of Kyosho Platinums on it because I don't know, I was trying to turn it into an Ultima or something, but I ended up giving my shocks away to a friend to put on his like Radio Shack car or whatever. And I always regretted getting rid of those later because I couldn't put them back on their car to make it all original. So if these will be sold separately, I think I'll be purchasing another set to go on my original. But just seeing these again after so many years is pretty crazy. Here's this, I'm not gonna lie, this is a nightmare differential. If I have any bad memories from building my original car, it was in building the transmission. It was a bear for a first-time builder. Very overcomplicated compared to today's cars. A lot more gears. I'm just looking here at a glance. It looks like everything is bushing in there. So they did not upgrade to ball bearing for the transmission. My car, I did upgrade to ball bearings. I ended up going through the hell of tearing the transmission apart and replacing all the bushings with bearings. Still undecided if I'll do that yet on this. It might be a good idea to put the ball bearings in. Having the bushings would be cool because it'd be all original. I mean, the whole point back then of doing ball bearings was runtime. I mean, battery capacities were minuscule, so making a 4-minute heat was a stretch. So switching to ball bearings definitely made things more efficient. But I don't know if it's needed so much today, right? Like, battery capacities are so huge that you can still get tons of runtime on the stock stuff there. So part of me just wants to build this thing and put it on a shelf and never drive it, and then, in which case the bushings would be totally fine. The other part of me is like, you know, if a vintage class ever emerges because of this re-release, you know, would I take this new one and race it as opposed to my old one? In which case I would want the ball bearings. So, to be decided at a later date. The driver, no idea where my original went. I did not paint this for my original model, but I will be doing so for this one. There's the motor plate. I'm not sure what the silver plate is. I don't remember. And the ever popular black grease. We got here, it looks like we got shock internals. It's funny, these O-rings and the way these shocks are built looks like Associated's still using, at least in their relatively modern kits. Pistons look the same. So it's kind of funny that that really hasn't changed over the years. There's the body. And these were kind of hard to get. I remember looking on eBay for these, and I even bought one that was the wrong version to try and, you know, clean up my old car. But there it is. There's the original body, just like back in the day. Rod ends. These guys are one thing. They look a little different than they did back then, but really a bear to build because they're not turnbuckles. So you're just holding on to the middle of it and threading them on with like a pair of pliers or something. Those are pretty laborious to build. A lot of sore fingers when I was a kid building those. Looks like a rear bulkhead, wing mount. Looks like the scale fog lights and gear cover. Front A-arms, steering blocks, new battery tray. This was supposedly modified to fit LiPo. There's the three-piece wheels. Probably the most iconic part of an RC10. Jelly bean wheels. Rear A-arms, dog bones. Rear wing. This is the part I'm kind of excited to see. This is all... I don't think the original one I had came with box art stickers. It only came with like associated logos. But this has all this stuff so you can really do it up and make it look like the box art car if you want. These are servo mounts. I think I actually have the originals of these still in the plastic. I'm not even sure what those are. Might be some type of suspension mount. Servo saver. C-hub, I would guess. And the chassis. This looks a whole lot thinner than the original. The color looks a little bit off too. So I'll mic this here in a minute and we'll see what the difference is in the thickness, but this feels a lot lighter than the original. So anyway, there it is unboxed. QC checklist in Chinese. That's the one big difference I noticed on the box is right here there's a Made in America sticker on the old one. Doesn't exist on the new one, unfortunately. Anyway, I'm ready to start building. So anyway, major omissions I'm seeing. This one does not come with a stock 540 motor like the original did. The original also came with the old wiper style speed control. That is not included. There's no electronics in this box at all. I want to crack this open and look at the manual. I can see already it's not the same, so we'll see how that's changed here as well. So anyway, check this out. Here, original RC10 manual, updated manual. Although they're different colors and they look the same on the cover, which it's kind of cool that they did that. The insides of this manual are nothing the same at all. It's all the exploded view stuff that you'd expect to see in a modern kit. So might make building this one a lot easier. But anyway, for those of you who haven't watched the other video, give you a bit of contrast. You see there's no exploded views, it's just pictures of parts and a description of how it all goes together. So pretty big departure there. Will definitely aid first time builders and probably me. Just kind of flipping through the motor here. I was looking at the gearing chart, and some of the doubt people were talking about were the drivetrain, how much horsepower it would hold. But it says due to the design of the original transmission, it recommends you do not exceed an 8.5 turn, which 8.5 is a pretty hot motor in my book. So the fact that it will hold that is kind of a testament to an old design, I guess. That's 8.5 is a pretty serious motor. Alright, step one. I do like how all the bags are labeled exactly like they were back in the day. Like the old, style price guns that yeah, you guys from the 80s will know what I'm talking about. They're the big roll of stickers. Pretty much what it is. Nose plate. Looks like the AE logo is laser engraved. I believe the old one was stamped. So there's a difference. And bag A here. This is kind of crazy. I'm getting flashbacks of doing this when I was a kid. I remember putting on this post. Interestingly enough, all the hardware is Phillips, just like it was. I can remember stripping those guys out. So my first tip for this is going to be getting a high quality screwdriver. Don't use a cheap piece of crap, because you will spin those right off of there. So we're doing some servo saver. Got the nose plate on. Okay, so ball stud installation here. Tool number one that makes my life easier compared to when I was a kid is I actually have a proper nut driver that will fit those. So there's sore fingers that I won't be having. I can just remember this just being an absolute nightmare, trying to thread these in with a pair of needle nose pliers. It's just funny how stuff like that comes back to you. Steering bell cranks. One thing about this stuff, guys, you can put your metric hardware away. All this stuff is standard. Onward to bag B. E-clips. These things were my nemesis. I lost so many of these. I remember I had to go to the hobby store and buy more because I would just be cranking on them with pliers to get them to pop on there, and then it'd be like, ping, gone. I think I still have rolls of these. They used to come in little. There was basically a stack of them, and there was a sticker around them that held them together, and you just peeled them off one by one as you use them. I think I still have some of those laying around. That wasn't bad at all. Guess maybe I'm a little better at this than I used to be, or maybe the materials have changed. I'm wondering if the arms are made out of the same stuff as the old one, because the old cars were just like bulletproof, man. You could just crash them as hard as you want, nothing would break. I hope these are the same way. For sure, huge difference on building these, and this is something that Cliff Lett mentioned in his interview in that Radio Impound podcast that I will have probably cited earlier in this video. Before, the parts manufacturing just wasn't all that precise, so for every single kingpin or hinge pin you had to put in, it had to be reamed. And this time around, everything's very precise. The fit is very good. No issues at all with a lot of binding as far as how that fits, so that's pretty nice. I spoke too soon on the no reaming. The hole for this hub is just a little bit too tight for the hinge pin, so I have to ream it out just a smidge. I remember having to do this a lot first time around. Another thing Cliff Lett cited in his interview was that in their kind of design process, or redesign process on this car, they had lost a lot of the original, I don't know what you call it, molds, whatever they were using to do the car. So they had to redesign some of them. So some of the parts are supposed to be easily identifiable that they're a redesigned part, and then some parts are supposed to be untouched, or exactly like the original. So I guess I can understand running into some fitment issues that would be exactly like the old school version, because they essentially are the old school version. Another tool I consider a must that did not have back in the day when building these. We've seriously cut into that month-long build time, I'm sure. They say Loctite on these bolts. I never Loctite on my others. They would occasionally come loose, but very, very seldom. I think they'll be plenty tight that way. Turn this clutch down so I don't strip anything. Even with a clutch, I never tighten down all the way. Here's what it should look like if you're building along. It's time to stick all this to the chassis. Ugh, I scratched it. Because I should be more careful if this is going to be a shelf queen. Interesting story about that. I'll point this out here in a second. Sheesh. Let's sit this down. think associated when they first put this car out, this is all based on the interview I heard again on that podcast I keep referring to, which is episode 15, the Radio Impound podcast with interview with Cliff Lett. The initial intention was to put this car out as a collector's item for fans of the original car like myself. But I guess the response was so huge that initially they doubled their amount of production they were going to do just because it was so huge. So they started producing the cars, and the intention was that they did not want to take away from the value of the vintage car, but they also wanted to have a parts store, because they're going to support parts for this car, for people to be able to get their old ones back on the road, or as well as, you know, just recreate an old one that someone may have had earlier and didn't have anymore. So I think once the response was just huge, I think that they are kind of hoping that vintage racing catches on here in the States. Apparently it's quite big overseas in Europe, and it's growing here. So they made a couple of design choices to try and address that. One of which is, you'll notice the drilling back here. Let me get the other one. These both in frame here. You'll notice that the new chassis has a lot more holes in it. And that's a racing decision. They did that so that if you want to race this car, that a modern stealth transmission will bolt straight into that gold pan chassis. So you don't have to run the old 6-gear with the external diff. You can run Associated's most modern transmission in this car to update performance. And the reason, there's a couple of reasons. One is, better tunability, rebuildability, things like that, and that the new transmission will hold a lot more horsepower. They say they tested the reproduction transmission to hold, the manual says it holds up to an 8.5 brushless. Cliff Lett said they ran up to a 6.5 and it held up fine, so, which is a pretty hot motor in my opinion. So if you're going to run something bigger than that, you're probably going to want to switch to the stealth transmission. So anyway, just interesting fact, interesting design choice in the reproduction car. Let's get some arms mounted up here. I think that'll wrap it up for volume 2 of this video, because it'll be the unboxing and then the front end of the car. So let's test fit these hinge pins here. Great fit on that, and that fits fantastic as well. So let's pop these in here. Blast from the past, the E-clip taking off on you. Hopefully it didn't go too far. Funny thing is, when tracking down lost E-clips, I just remembered being a lot easier to get off the floor when I was 10 as opposed to now. Found the E-clip, so we're in good shape. Alright. There we go. Front end of the car. Everything moves nice and freely, which is exactly how you want it. This thing is together enough to put it on a car stand. progress, right? So anyway, that's going to wrap it up for this video. The next one we'll move on to building the transmission and rear suspension, it looks like. Yep, transmission. That should be a whole nother ball of wax, but a lot easier than first time around because you just don't have all the gear issues. There's a lot of webbing and a lot of molding issues on the original gears, and it took a lot of work to get that transmission smooth. So I think another decision I've made is, since I'm purchasing this car possibly to race if a vintage class does emerge, I'm not going to use stock bushings. I'm going to go ahead and order ball bearings and install that now. One of the funniest stories I can remember from building my original RC10 was that I built the car with bushings, went racing, and then it was clear to me that I needed ball bearings, especially with battery capacities back then. You needed all the runtime you could get, so I had to pull it completely back apart, install ball bearings. It was a complete nightmare. It just took days to do it, and the car was down. It drove me nuts because I like to drive it every day. So, you know, learn from past mistakes. I'm going to go ahead and put ball bearings in it now. In the event that I do race this car, it will be ready to go in that respect. And the other thing is, I wanted to ask you guys questions. I'm not going to hunt down vintage electronics for this. And I don't want to put brushless, and maybe I will. I don't know. But I wanted to get everybody's opinions of what power plant I should put in the car. I would like to get something kind of retro, but something that's still new. I've had some suggestions of using Tamiya's ESC that they put out for their reissue cars. It's kind of a throwback ESC. I ran Tekin back in the day. Here, check this out. I'll show it to you guys. It's kind of funny to look at today compared to, or look at them from yesterday versus what they are now. Check that out. This was pretty much the bottom of the line Tekin ESC you could buy back then, but man, it was a big deal to get a hold of that when I was a kid. If you ever used the wiper style speed controls, going electronic was a pretty huge deal. So anyway, yeah, I want everybody's opinion on what electronics you think I should put in here, and I will address that in the next video. So I appreciate you guys watching. The response to this first video has been great, so there are some people following the build, which I really appreciate, and just want to say thanks for watching. Catch you on the next one.